be a lot of support. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call the meeting to order at 4 p.m. The Standing Committee meeting for October 13th, 2020. We'll begin with the adoption of the agenda. Administration, do we have any changes or additions to the agenda?
None from administration.
Council, any additions, changes, discussion? Seeing none, then I am looking, Councilor Nelson.
I'll move that we adopt the Standing Committee agenda for October 15th, 2020.
Perfect. Thank you, Council. Any discussion? Seeing none, then I will call that to question, please. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. We will move on to Citizens Minute with Council, and we have none today, which lets us move on to action items, and we will begin with our first action item on page 2 of our agenda, and I will go over to CAO Olson.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the August 25th Standing Committee meeting, Council received a report regarding upcoming budget process. And during that discussion, administration sought some direction on public engagement for the budget 2021 process. Council indicated at that time that a combination of in-person and virtual attendance for any engagement activities was preferred. Administration researched possible options for engagement that would serve Council's intentions now and into the future. Due to time constraints, the recommended action is to enter into an engagement session that builds off of last year's town hall meeting, but includes an online Zoom component where the public can submit questions either prior to the session through email or in real time and view from home the meeting. The location for the town hall would be at the path, similar to last year, with all COVID measures in place to support public safety. Any costs can be managed within the communications budget for 2020, and the intention is to hold this event within the first 2 weeks of November, prior to the budget deliberation meetings planned for later in the month, which more information will be coming up to Council and dates circulated right away. Administration is also looking for direction from Council on the remaining 3 options for future use into 2021 and beyond. A report detailing these options can be presented to Council into next year to support public engagement activities for future town hall meetings or any other Council supported engagement events. This time, administration would be happy to entertain any questions that Council might have.
Perfect. Thank you, administration. Council, it's open for discussion and questions. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just put forward a recommendation. It's administration's recommendation that Council direct administration to carry out option 1 Simplified Town Hall in November of 2020, and that Council direct administration to prepare a report detailing recommendations on option 2 and 3 in preparation for a future town hall and other organizational engagement events before the end of Q2 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Nelson.
Okay, I move to split, please.
Good. Okay, we will split. That is a non-debatable motion. So we have the first of 2 motions in front of us, or sorry, pardon me, directions in front of us. The first, that Council direct administration to carry out option 1, Simplified Town Hall in November of 2020. Speaking only to that, do we have any questions or discussion? Councilor?
I think we touched on it a little bit at the last meeting, but more for the public. Last year we did a great town hall that was really well received. Obviously this year is going to be modified and different, and I'm excited to take part in it and curious about how it goes and what the uptake is and what feedback we get. I'll definitely be supporting this part of the motion. Thank you.
I'll jump in queue next for myself. I certainly support this direction. I think, again, as Councilor Nelson had just mentioned, went over really well. I think anytime we have that chance to interface with the public and get some feedback on what's happening with our budget and or what some of the high level issues might or can be, that's a win for us because we get a better feel for what's happening at the ground level. So I'm looking forward to supporting this. Councilor Haas?
Yeah, I'm excited too with the addition to Zoom to see if we get more participation, from some of our residents as well. I hope that does occur, with those that probably prefer the more face-to-face. So yeah, no, I'm in full support of this as well.
I'll chime in with a question for administration on this point. I sort of assume this, But if you could just confirm, my understanding would be that if we're including Zoom as part of this town hall package, that it will allow us for the opportunity for folks at home to submit questions through Zoom that can be moderated to council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is the intention, that we can receive questions in real time and pose those to council as we go.
Awesome. Great, thank you. Council, any further discussion or questions on this direction on the floor? Seeing none, then I will call that to question. The council direct administration to carry out option 1, simplified town hall in November of 2020. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, did you want to take back over for the second part? Or wait, sorry, no, you don't need to. It was split. So we'll now move on to this. The direction on the floor is that council direct administration to prepare a report detailing recommendations on options 2 and 3 in preparation for a future town hall and other organizational engagement events before the end of Q2 2021. Any discussion? Councilor Nelson.
Quick question for administration. If this direction was tabled until after we did our town hall early in November, would that affect it coming back in Q2?
Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Councilor Nelson. It wouldn't have an impact. I don't anticipate on it coming back before the end of Q2 2021.
Councilor Nelson.
With that in mind, I'd like to make a direction that this direction is tabled until after the simplified town hall meeting. If I can speak to it, I'm really curious to hear what the community has to say about the Zoom one, what the participation level is, what the interaction is, and before we send administration working to bring back reports, I think whatever clarity and learning we have from that event will really help my conversation with citizens to help make this decision and potentially change the scope of what administration would bring back. So thank you.
Councilor Haas.
Yeah, and I concur with Councilor Nelson. I think that, after adding the Zoom component to this town hall meeting, seeing the success of it, and and just looking at the dollar signs as well, just to see how it goes. Maybe smaller is bigger sometimes. It's achievable and works well. So, and until we see the outcome from this and what the citizens think, I think we can wait for that. So, I would agree.
Sorry, can I point of order myself? It should be postponed, not tabled.
Very good. Thank you, Councilor Nelson.
Scared me there. Like, what did I say? I'm agreeing with you, dude.
Very good. All right, Council, any concerns about that? I mean, it is a point of order, and the chair certainly agrees, but I would like to just give Council a second. Any concerns, Council? Seeing none, then we'll carry on with conversation. Any questions or discussion on this so far? I'll chime in myself. I certainly agree with that. I think I'm very hopeful that our town hall will be successful again. I think that's a really good time to get a little bit of future input, sort of finishing up round 2 at the time and saying, hey, look, where would you like to see this go in the following year? Get a little bit of that fine direction for administration to reach out with, so that we're not burning resources to go down paths that there's really no general desire to go down. So yeah, I certainly agree. Council, any other further discussion? Seeing none, we will call to question that the above direction is postponed until after the simplified town hall meeting. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. There we go. Thank you, Council. I do believe that takes care of the recommendations. Council, any other points or concerns, questions on that action item? Seeing none, we will move on to action item number 2, the Hinton Grant Funding Advisory Committee for 2021 on page 6 of our agendas. And I will turn that over to our CAO again. Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a housekeeping item before council to address an oversight seen during the 2019 organizational meeting where Hinton Grant Funding Advisory Committee members were not appointed past the 2019 grant term. With the delay in the community grant funding intake and awarding of funds due to COVID-19 and as well as administrative capacity, the 2020 process was not completed prior to the organizational meeting. It's intended to be completed in the following weeks. To manage the situation, administration is seeking direction to provide transparency to the oversight and acknowledge that, as well as the ability for council to allow the 2021 Grant Funding Advisory Committee members to award the 2020 funds. The recommended action for this item is that committee direct administration to bring forward a list of candidates for the Hinton Grant Funding Advisory Committee to the October 20th, 2020 organizational meeting, and that the committee's one-year term be inclusive of advising council on the awarding of the 2020 fall intake of the community grant. If council has any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Council, it's over to you. Any discussion and or direction? Councilor Nelson.
A question, is 1 year term long enough? Like, does it give them enough time to complete the 3 different intakes?
Administration?
I'll defer to Ms. Wade.
Thanks, CAO Olson. So typically they would do just the 2 intakes. So last year we would have assigned for spring and fall. So due to our delay in actually getting it out this year, it is good timing in that the group will be assigned by council at the organizational meeting, at which time they can sit on the fall intake of this year and then the 2 for next year as well.
Thanks, Councilor Nelson. Thanks, Ms. Way. Council, any discussion direction? Councilor Haas.
I'd like to make direction the committee direct administration to bring forward a list of candidates for the Hinton Grant Funding Advisory Committee to the October 20th, 2020 organizational meeting, and that the committee's one-year term be inclusive of advising council on the awarding the 2020 fall intake of the community grant.
Would you speak to that at all, Councilor Haas?
I just want to confirm that this first direction does encounter the 3 intakes, right? Correct. Yeah, no, I think that it's reasonable. I mean, as long as the group is, able to commit, but I also know they usually have other people potentially available from CAC just in case. So, I mean, I think it's reasonable to ask them to do all 3 just because of COVID and the delay. It also helps with consistency as well. And we don't have to go again and find other applicants as well for the fall 2021. So I'll be speaking in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Wall.
No, I was just going to make a motion.
Okay, sounds good. Councilor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has the chair for the committee been consulted with this, and are they on board with it?
Administration.
I'll defer to Ms.
Pardon me. At this time, due to there not being any one assigned last year, there is no chair. So again, once they're assigned this year, then we'll reach out and make sure that they're all good for the training. But as Councillor Hawes mentioned, there will be enough time that if we have to find different members, we can do that.
Yeah, I think we still have an option. If they take this on and they determine in their 1 year term that it's too much work to do 3 intakes, we can cross that bridge if we need to and rescind a motion. So I'm happy. I think having the same committee do 3 could actually provide some learning and a little bit less training for getting more bulk of your 3 intakes. So I'm happy to support this. So thank you.
Sounds good. Councilor Haas.
I think just to clarify too, and this is just for information, but I don't believe there is a chair that's appointed. From my experience being on that committee before, that they're all equals. It's the administration that basically runs but it's the group that also it's a group, each individual, whether they can make the 3 terms or not. So yeah, that's just for information. I just want to make sure if I'm correct in that.
Correct, in that administration guides them through the process and provides all of their training. We keep minutes, but correct.
Okay, just checking. Great.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. Council, any further discussion? Very well, then we will call this to question. That committee direct administration to bring forward a list of candidates for the Hinton Grant Funding Advisory Committee to the October 20th, 2020 organizational meeting, and that committee's 1 year term be inclusive of advising council on the awarding the 2020 fall intake of the community grant. All those in favor, please indicate. And that is carried unanimously. Very good, and we will move on to our last action item on page 11 of 15. That's the Partners for Climate Protection, the PCP report, or pardon, program reporting. And we will turn that over once again to our CAO, Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is before Council tonight to provide an update to the work completed on the Partners for Climate Protection Program commitment that the Town of Hinton entered into in May 2019. The first milestone in this program has been completed due to grant funds provided by FCM through the Natural Step Canada, with the funds used to secure support by the Delphi Group for assistance in corporate and community GHG emissions inventories, GHG projections, and options for GHG emission reductions. Milestone 1 also included opportunities presented by the Delphi Group for targets in corporate and community GHG emissions reductions. In addition to the support that was engaged outside of the Town of Hinton, 3 to 4 staff people provided support and contributed to the project. The Natural Step Canada as well, extending some thanks to them. They were very supportive and encouraging and provided additional flexibility in order to keep the project moving forward. Mr. Vanna and Mr. Jaworski contributed to the heavy lifting on the administrative side. Moving forward, the completion of milestone 2 involves an engagement component that could be supported by the CAO committee, with additional support provided by administration to support the work that would be undertaken by that group. CAO could be empowered through that process moving forward for achieving milestone 3 and 4 as well. A community that commits to the PCP program has up to 10 years to complete since the date that they undertake that resolution to participate, and they can can request a hiatus at any time. The plan for completion of the milestone work is proposed to take 6 years. At this time, no budget has been requested, but as the work progresses, the milestone work itself, in particular milestone 4, where implementation of the action plan begins, may require investment. Tonight, the recommended action for this item is that committee receive the Partners for Climate Protection Program report for information, and that committee direct administration to engage with the community engagement and advisory committee to recommend emission reductions targets to council as part of milestone 2 of the Partners for Climate Protection Program. And just to provide a little bit of clarification on that motion and what we're intending by that, it's due to that community engagement component that we'd be looking to seek CAO support in assisting with milestone 2 work. Some of the information, including recommendations, has been provided already by the Delphi Group, identifying some opportunities for the Town of Hinton through corporate and community emissions reduction. So we'll be looking to work with CAO for that engagement component, supported by administration to create the targets to then bring to council for adoption. So I hope that provides a little bit of clarification to CAO members if they're watching. As well, administration has spoken to CAO last week on Thursday and has another upcoming meeting this week on Thursday to speak to them further. So they've been engaged prior to this as well. Mr. Vanna is present and assist in answering any of council's questions. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Council, this is now over to us. Do we have any questions for administration discussion? Councilor Nelson.
Will we get an actual copy of the report? There's kind of a summary in here, but the actual emissions, because I did have some questions, but it doesn't seem like they're necessarily relevant to what's kind of been prepared for this one.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Administration.
I'll defer to Mr. Vanna.
Mr. Vanna.
Yes, members of council, there is a final report that is being prepared, and once I have that in my hands, then I'll provide that to council. In preparing this report, a lot of it is done on Excel spreadsheets, and so that it becomes cumbersome to try and put that into a proper Word document, so to speak. A number of the other items are actually on our website as well from on the milestone work. So it's in a few places, but for sure council will get a copy.
you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Thank you, Mr. Vanna. I have myself up next then. I guess administration, my question as well regarding the plan, and I think more so when the report is finished and ready. Do we have a public interface plan for other partners in the community? You know, and I just some highlights offhand, I'm thinking about our business sectors, you know, the Chamber of Commerce, partners like that, you know, I don't want to say that they have a hand in it. We all do. But it's something important for us that I've seen in the past, that if we can get ahead of it and communicate these sorts of things early on and get everybody else on board, sometimes it makes these sorts of plans, if not more palatable, you know, better in terms of the educational piece.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just acknowledge that this report was moved up in the queue. We have a large agenda for October 27th, and there was an opportunity to bring this before council to discuss during this meeting. So I guess some of the detail may not have been fully fleshed out. A communications plan surrounding the report once it's released is something that we'll look at implementing. Some of these stakeholders have been engaged through the process as well to receive their information to build the report. So follow through on closing the loop. That information sharing is definitely something that the town will undertake. Looking forward to further engagement of these groups through the use of SEAC and the conversations that will take place in the community prior to the completion of milestone 2. We'll look to re-engage those stakeholders as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Mr. Vanna?
Just to add to those comments, generally speaking, the setting of the GHG targets and the energy targets tend to be fairly, say, an academic kind of an exercise, where you look at other communities and sort of how they've looked at it, and we're using SEAC to kind of establish that. Where the real community involvement comes is in stage 3 and milestone 3, where as you're kind of going through that planning process to create your new community sustainability plan and complete milestone 3, there would be full engagement in the community, and we sort of see SEAC helping to spearhead that initiative, but certainly involving all members of the community.
Thank you, Mr. Vanna. And I guess council, I'll take the opportunity to speak to that then. I think that's one of those really good opportunities for us to engage with SEAC. We had talked about giving some very pointed, direction / collaboration with SEAC in partnership to sort of track down specific projects and say, hey, look, here's something we'd like to see you do. SEAC had asked for that in the past. So this is, I think, a good extension of those conversations where we can say this is something of interest to all of us. It's part of our sustainability plan. This is exactly what SEAC, we're supposed to work with you on. Can you do this? Can you facilitate those conversations? So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Councillor Waugh.
Yeah, and I spoke with the chair of SEAC today, just prior to the meeting, just to get a better idea where the group is at, and I had sent a link out to the agenda to SEAC members over the weekend just to get some feedback, and I think they're open to learning more what their role would be in this sort of scenario. They're open to the idea. 2 of the factors was 1, not quite understanding the scope of their role based on the agenda, and 2, getting a better understanding of the timing. But if this is something, CO, I believe this is targeted for 2021. Yeah, so I think that they'd be definitely amenable to having the conversation about what role they could have moving forward. Again, it's based on a little bit more detail, and I think we're meeting in the very near future. So,
thank you, Councillor Waugh. Council, any further discussion or direction? We don't have direction on the Councillor Waugh.
I would. There we go.
Oops, sorry.
Oh, wrong right out from it. I would make the direction the committee receive the Partners for Climate Protection PCP program report for information.
Very good.
And we're treating them as two separate ones, correct?
Totally up to you, and then if anybody puts in a,
Let's just simplify it.
okay, sounds good. Did you want to speak to that any further, Councillor Wong?
Yeah, and I think Councillor Nelson spoke to getting a report on the more full scope of what's been found so far. But I think for the purpose of tonight, I'm happy to take this next step forward and receive this for information.
Thank you. Council, any further discussion? Seeing none, then I'll call this to question. The direction being that council receive the Partners for Climate Protection PCP program report for information. All those in favor, please indicate. And that is carried unanimously. Councillor Nelson.
I'd like to make a direction that committee direct administration to engage with the Community Engagement Advisory Committee CAC to recommend emission reductions targets to council as part of milestone 2 of the PCP program. If I can speak to it, I'm excited that CAC has the opportunity to actually be tasked with something specific. I think that's a lot of what's been lacking, and I'm hoping that this is something they can kind of latch onto and actually feel purposeful. So I'm looking forward to it, and if they aren't up for it, or if it doesn't seem within the scope that they're hoping, the direction is just to engage with them, so it doesn't force us down that path if there is no interest from that side. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, any further discussion? Seeing none, then I'll call that to question. The direction being that council direct administration to engage with the Community Engagement Advisory Committee CAC to recommend emission reduction targets to council as part of the milestone 2 of the Partners for Climate Protection program. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. Councillor Nelson.
I did have a question about this and how it relates with the CSP. And if this can't be answered tonight, don't. I can follow up via email. But I believe the CSP Update Committee was postponed once, waiting on a staff grant that we declined, and then postponed again in order to know what we were doing with the PCP framework. And so now that we have a little bit better idea where that is at, where do we stand with updating the CSP, and is there anything required from council on that matter?
Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Nelson. This is something Mr. Vanna and I spoke about this afternoon, actually, to get an idea of, well, just to revisit that motion, to postpone work on the CSP past milestone 1 and 2 completion. And Mr. Vanna, if I could turn to you for just some additional description. He's worked on milestone work and how it relates to CSP and climate mitigation strategies and things in the past.
Sure. So from other community sustainability plans that I've worked on, generally speaking, what happens after you've established your emission targets and what measures you want to have, then becomes a really good opportunity when you're redoing your community sustainability plan to really, then you can incorporate milestones 3, 4, and 5 in those 3 to really get a robust sustainability plan together for the community. And so really what it entails is coming up with a good terms of reference, engaging the CAC committee if they choose to do that, as well as the community for sure, and the business community. And then coming up with that plan. As part of the plan, you would then incorporate your measures, your targets, and it would actually incorporate into a lot of the work that we're doing in terms of our asset management work, in terms of how we look at the longevity and our sustainability of our infrastructure, as well as incorporating green infrastructure, those type of measures. And so really it really pulls it all together in terms of that. So that's really the next step, but really we're trying to break it off into bite-sized pieces for us. So that's why we're starting off with the milestone 2.
Thank you, Mr. Vanna.
Could I just follow up as well?
Please.
I think this is maybe more for council to consider, but the CSP has 5 pillars, only one of which is environment, and we delayed. I think when we were all elected, we had talked about putting resources and time and commitment into the CSP, and I think it's something we should think about and consider whether we want to hold up and update the entire CSP in order to properly flesh out the environment pillar, or if we should be looking at the other 4 pillars. Again, prior to the next council getting elected, I'm not sure where everybody stands on that. I'm not sure where I stand, but probably something that would be good to be thoughtful about at this time. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, any other discussion on those points? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just following up on Councillor Nelson's point, I would strongly support moving forward with the CSP in that committee. I don't know if Councillor Nelson had an idea of what kind of direction we can give tonight. And I think if not, that we visit this in the coming weeks. But if there's any direction that you deemed possible for tonight, I would entertain that, and I would almost for sure support that. So,
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Nelson.
Again, I just haven't put enough time into knowing where the motions stand and the history of it and all of those things to properly make a direction that I think would do what we need to do justice. I think too, if it's something that the agenda prep committee feels is timely, understanding where we're at with PCP and understands when there's a gap in a agenda, it might just be able to happen organically that way as well. But thank you. Thanks for the request.
Administration.
Just for council's consideration, I suppose the direction that administration is working on is to complete milestone 1 and 2 prior to revisiting the CSP. So at the outside, but without any further direction from council, council will see something after milestone 2 is complete.
Mr. Mayor.
thank you, Mr. Chair. In hearing that, so it's to my understanding that the agenda prep committee couldn't even bring this forward because there's a direction right now that council as a whole has put forward. And I don't want to belabor it. I'm not prepared also, but I think if there's appetite from or consensus from council to revisit the CSP, I think we give at least some high level direction tonight in order to get that conversation going at another committee meeting.
Councillor Nelson.
Is there any ballpark of how long milestone 2 will be? I'm assuming it's not a quick turnaround for it. Is there a kind of an expectation? Because if it's a 2-month thing, I don't think any direction is necessary. But if it's going to be a 6 month to a year thing, then maybe a direction would be good to have on the table.
Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll defer to Mr. Vanna, but I believe that it definitely isn't a 6 month to a year exercise. It could be accomplished in a much shorter amount of time, but Mr. Vanna, if he has a
Mr. Chairman, perhaps just to speak to that issue. So in the report, we've identified that it's going to take it usually takes about 2 meetings to work with the committee to kind of go over, here's what we've come up with, here's some opportunity areas that we've identified. Certainly we'd have to review these opportunity areas internally to make sure from a corporate perspective that these areas do make sense, that we can actually reduce some reductions and save some money and energy, in these areas. But community-wise, certainly, a couple of meetings. So you're probably looking at 2 to 3 months by the time all said and done. Because I'm expecting, like I say, the final report will be done this month in October. And so really, by the time you engage the committee, go working through that, you're probably looking at, January or something like that before you're said and done.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Vanna. I think I'm comfortable leaving it where it stands right now. In the next 2 months, we've got budget and a bunch of other things. And I think, for me personally, I'm going to go out to the community and really talk to them about the CSP, because there's been a small group that have pushed really hard for it. But I don't know if the overall community wants to see an update to a 40-year document in the middle of a lot of changes at every level of government, in the community, industry, and everything. So it might be something that I don't know if we need it. We've done a lot of work on the economic pillar around diversification and things like that. We have HRDC working out. We have an ActDev person working on it. There's a lot happening with it. I'm good with just kind of letting it lie for now and circling back to it in the spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Council, any other discussion on that item before we move on to additional information? Seeing none, then we will move on to additional information. Item number 1, urgent matters from council, and I will start with Councilor Wall.
No urgent matters.
Councilor Hudson.
None for me.
Councilor Nelson.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
And nothing from myself. We will move on to item 2, CAO Status Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a quick update. This afternoon, I received the first draft of Council's strategic plan update. And I've taken a look through that. I'm looking to bring it forward to Council on October 27th for discussion. So quite a timely, quick turnaround on that document so that Council can take a look at it prior to our budget deliberations. At this time, I'm unsure if it'll be the fully designed copy that's brought forward or if it'll be the word script only. So I'll indicate that in the report that accompanies it, that I'm happy with the quick turnaround and look forward to the discussion with council at the end of the month. And then as well, I'll move into, I guess, the legislative services update. I mentioned last week that we have filled that role. But at the end of last week, sorry to scare everybody, it's good, it's all good. The quick look at me. So at the end of last week, I sat in on a webinar for municipal affairs. There's been some changes to the Elections Act that's going to impact the election next year. Administration's working on understanding what those are and what our obligations are as far as communications and distribution of materials and whatnot. So more information is to come, but we are preparing. And we'll look to have all required information on the website as well as some communications around what those changes are prior to the end of 2020, as the changes will take effect January 1st, 2021. So just an update to look for that information, and other than that, that's all that I have.
Thank you, administration. Additional information, item number 4, executive assistant logistics information.
I have nothing.
Excellent. Then seeing nothing else on the agenda, council, I am looking for, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Motion to adjourn.
Excellent. Council, any discussion? Seeing none, then we will call that to question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. We are adjourned at 4:37 p.m.